Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And we're going to be talking about something that is near and dear to my heart, and that's branding. And I think so many companies, people, organizations, whatever, don't even understand what it is. So then they get it wrong. And then they wonder, why the heck are things not working? And so please join me in welcoming Cheri Quinn to our program today. Welcome, Cheri. How are you?
I'm doing great, Deb. Thank you so much for having me.
Perfect. Well, let me tell people just a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this. So Cheri Quinn is a brand and marketing strategist who specializes in asking open and honest questions and listening with an open heart and mind. As the director of brand strategy at Mercury Creative Group, Cheri is the master at discovering and communicating an organization's essential value. That's very important. With a wealth of experience in brand strategy, strategic planning, marketing, and communications, she has helped numerous organizations discover their unique value and voice. So again, Cheri, welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate being here. That's a great lead up as well. There's some meaty things to talk about.
Lots of juicy things in there. But I always like asking my guests, tell us a little bit more about how it is that you got to where you are today.
Sure, I'm happy to. I often, along with that bio that you read, I also tend to tell people that I'm the resident word nerd on our team.
I love it.
And what that means to me is I do the word part of branding and marketing, really digging into who an organization is, what they do, who they do it for, and focusing on those foundational elements. Oftentimes when I kick off meetings with clients, I'll say, I'm the word nerd, so the more words you say, the more I like it. That's really where the rubber meets the road for me, so to speak. How I got into this work, I worked for many years. My background is in financial services. I worked for many years for a large broker-dealer financial services firm in marketing and branding for them. And along the way, I ended up being in a position where, as the pendulum swings in that environment, where I was required, in order to move up in that organization, I was required to take and pass my Series 7 exam for
those are not fun.
Not fun. I failed twice. I took it twice. I failed twice. And at that point in time, I thought, okay, I am not a financial services executive working in a marketing role. I am a marketer working in a financial services firm. And so at that point, I left and went out on my own. I became a consultant in brand and marketing strategy, and took my knowledge, took my own point of view as well, and continued really to serve people within that industry. It was kind of my wheelhouse. So worked with a lot of franchise financial advisors on really their own businesses, what they needed to focus on for branding and marketing and for themselves. And from there, I also had some agencies reach out to me to do different projects and consult on projects, which I loved. I'm a person that my mind goes in a lot of different directions anyway. So working on multiple projects at a time was a great fit for me. And ultimately, Mercury Creative Group became one of my biggest clients as a consultant, and ended up hiring me on full time. And I've always said, if it wasn't for this particular team of people and how our points of view aligned as well, I'd probably still be on my own consulting. So I really love working with this group. So in a in a short and sweet way, that's a little bit about how I got to where I am now.
I love it. I love it. Well, you said something that struck me very much because my background is that I worked for a financial company. Now only for several years because I finally went, oi, but I worked for ING, which is now Voya. And when I was there, it was the seventh largest corporation in the world. And so the resources that we had were just incredible. But my role was, I was in charge of corporate communications for 7 different business units. And you mentioned something that really struck me because it was a challenge that we always had were the broker dealers, the people who were basically independent contractors. And for them, finding their brand voice was very much a challenge because we had the overall brand of the company, but they still had to set themselves apart. And same thing with like a franchise, all of those. And I don't care if it's Domino's, I don't care if it's State Farm, whatever it is, you do have that overall brand. But how do you work with the individuals to help them kind of stand out?
Yeah, I love that question. That's exactly it. I oftentimes will say, especially for somebody that is a franchise owner, so to speak, or part of a bigger organization, financial services is a great example. I can throw a peanut from where I'm sitting right now and hit a financial advisor.
Right.
There's a lot of people.
There's a lot in Minneapolis. Yep.
There's a lot in Minneapolis. There's a lot of people that do what they do. But I am a big believer, because it's true, they all have a unique way of serving their clients, their approach to their work. And especially in environments where there's a lot of compliance and oversight.
Right. You will do it this way.
Exactly. So
and will is underlined in bold and capital and all of those things.
It does get tricky to go, okay, well, I'm under this compliance and oversight, yet I do have a specific way that I service my clients because I'm an individual. And so drawing out that individuality and that authenticity, I know authenticity is sometimes an overused word in our environment, but it is a very important word. It means something really special.
Right.
And it means just honing in on that individual point of view and that individual way of service. I often will say it's kind of how I align my own talent. I'm a brand strategist. There's lots of brand strategists in the world.
But what makes you unique?
Exactly. I feel very comfortable saying I'm happy to share how I do things exactly the way I do them. And here's the tools that I use and how I get there, because I know for sure that nobody will do it the way that I do it. So in order to find those brand elements from somebody that's in that kind of environment, we ask a lot of questions. And I listen with an open heart and open mind. And what I'm looking for is, I don't create brands for people. I don't create brands for businesses and organizations. Those brands already exist in the hearts and minds of that leadership, of that business owner. And I'm there to help discover and define what that is and put that messaging around it.
I love that.
Articulate it. I also think that it's more important now than it has ever been at any point in our past. Because just the sales cycle, if you will, if you refer to it that way, has changed so much over the past, let's call it 20 years for sure, in the past 5 years since the pandemic, is that because of the amount of information available to all of us at any given moment is so vast. We have access to anything we need at our fingertips. That it used to be that if I wanted to attract a specific audience, I held all the information and they wouldn't have it until I gave it to them. But now what happens is, if somebody wants to get to know me, they can find out lots of stuff about me before they ever meet me. So for me to be able to identify my authenticity and put that out into the world is really important, so that people that resonate with what I have to offer can find me and align with me, and they will know, oh, hey, she can help me, and we'll align and have that synergy before they ever meet me. Is really important.
I love that. Well, I think one of the things that, we need to, I'm going to take a step backward and define brand. So what is brand for you?
Sure. So I think brand and marketing sometimes get all mixed together in a
Right.
way, but really brand, in terms of brand strategy, it's those foundational elements of a business or of an organization. What I mean by that is it's defining who you are, what you do, who you do it for, and your differentiators. So focusing in on those elements, and they can include different kinds of exercises that follow along with that. Your core values, for example, your mission and vision, really honing in on your primary audience, that audience that gives you the best opportunity for growth.
Right.
Also, your value proposition. What does that look like? What does that mean? I talk about value proposition sometimes. I say, you know what, the template that we use at Mercury Creative Group, you can Google how to write a value proposition and you'll get something very similar to the template that we use. But it fills in all those blanks that are really important. And then we work with clients to conduct exercises, listening exercises, discovery, with leadership teams to really hone in on filling in those blanks. From a perspective of, I want to know about your brand and help discover and define that. It also consists of brand character and brand voice. And all of those things combined before you ever get to visuals. So setting those as foundational elements, and then your design and visuals align with that. Your marketing tactics align with that. Even your operations and your strategic planning align with that brand foundation.
Right. And your brand, folks, is not your logo.
Right. Oh, Deb, I have this great analogy that I'll say every once in a while. Is think about it like your logo makes a great first impression. But if you think about your brand being your logo, it would be as if your profile picture on your dating app would help you find your soulmate.
Right.
With no bio. So you can have a great profile picture and that makes a great first impression.
Right.
But your brand creates that emotional connection. So if your logo might catch the eye, your brand captures the heart.
Yes. And the logo is part of it. And you were mentioning that, years ago, I worked with a client and she was a professional photographer. She was a very high-end professional photographer. I mean, this is years ago, and she charged $5,000 a sitting. I mean, she charged a lot of money, right? And her logo, and she hired us to redo the logo. I mean, that was part of it. And to redo everything, her image, her brand, her messaging, the whole works. Her logo was something that her children had literally created using crayons, right? And so it was, like a stick figure person holding the hand of a littler stick figure person with a box around it, right? So it made, and what we told her was, we know that you love that. Your children created that. There's nothing in that shows somebody the value that you bring.
Right.
And, and when we, came back with other concepts, she understood. Now, granted, she was a very visual person, right?
Sure.
But yeah, it was, and I think so many people think I can just snag clip art. Oh, no, danger, don't do that. Or I don't even have to have things like that. And I love the dating application, analogy, because it is the whole package, right? What is the first impression? Then what are people going to swipe on? Now you can tell I've never used a dating app. But yeah, it is the whole thing. And I mean, Simon Sinek has made a small fortune out of what is your why. And the
Yes.
people who scoff at it, that's a very important thing. What is your why? What is your purpose?
Yeah, that foundation has to come first.
Mm-hmm.
If I wasn't who I was,
Mm-hmm.
my values,
Mm-hmm.
my character,
Mm-hmm.
my those are the things that
Mm-hmm.
build
Right.
relationships. I have to be that before you can
Mm-hmm.
take a good picture
Mm-hmm.
of.
Mm-hmm.
So the same way that logo or design work layers on top of your
Mm-hmm.
brand work. So that logo is an
Mm-hmm.
aspect of your brand. Of course, it's one of those elements. It's the visual
Mm-hmm.
element,
Mm-hmm.
but your brand foundation, where my wheelhouse is in brand strategy, especially, is really about
Mm-hmm.
applying the narrative,
Mm-hmm.
applying the words,
Mm-hmm.
capturing who you are, what you do, how you do it,
Mm-hmm.
and what creates that
Mm-hmm.
emotional connection that builds relationship
Right.
with your
Mm-hmm.
audiences, not just your
Mm-hmm.
clients,
Mm-hmm.
your potential team members,
Mm-hmm.
your joint venture partners, people
Right.
that
Mm-hmm.
refer you.
Mm-hmm.
All of those audiences involved really are going to align with who you are,
Mm-hmm.
what value you bring, how
Mm-hmm.
you're different than other
Mm-hmm.
organizations like you. And just the story you told, your logo then can tell that
Mm-hmm.
story and help
Right.
support it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, we ended up with like a gold embossed. I mean, right? It was
Yeah,
a
yeah,
very
cool.
sophisticated, type of image. But when, and I've had this struggle with people, both with my own stuff
Yeah.
and in working with people, when you say, what is your why? What is your purpose? They go, I had one person, and I love their honesty. They said to make money, sell stuff, make money. I'm
Sure.
like, okay. you know,
Okay.
and that really was. I mean, they didn't care what product they sold. They just wanted to make money.
Mhm.
And there were people who wanted to work with them. I mean, but what do you do when someone isn't quite sure what their purpose is?
The first thing, so when I'm working with organizations and working with more than one person, even if
Mm-hmm.
it is one person as a
Mm-hmm.
small business, if it's a small business
Mm-hmm.
owner, we start with who you're doing it for.
Okay. Everybody.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's a great answer. Yeah, everybody. I love that answer.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I have an analogy, a story for you that
Mm-hmm.
I share all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So for anybody listening to this conversation, they're like, "Oh, Cheri's going to tell the dartboard story again." I
Mm-hmm.
am going to tell the dartboard story. It really resonates in
Mm-hmm.
this regard. Starting with who you do it for
Mm-hmm.
is the first thing that you fill in on your value proposition.
Right.
For enter audience
Mm-hmm.
here
Mm-hmm.
is one of those big important
Right.
elements.
And
So
everyone is not the right answer.
everyone is definitely not the right answer, and I'll tell you why. So here's the dartboard story. I grew up in a tiny town in the Midwest,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm talking a two bars, three churches, one post office kind
It
of place.
sounds like my hometown.
There you
Mm-hmm.
go. It
Mm-hmm.
sounds like
No
lots of
stoplights.
people.
Mm-hmm.
No stoplights, right?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like a lot of people's hometown.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad, when I was a kid, owned
Mm-hmm.
one of the competing bars in town.
Ooh.
And when my brothers and sister and I were in grade school,
Mm-hmm.
after school, we'd walk up to the bar where
Mm-hmm.
my dad was getting ready for the evening,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd sit in the booths and do homework
Mm-hmm.
until my mom got off work to
Mm-hmm.
pick us up. And if we got our homework done in time, my dad let us throw darts.
Mm-hmm.
So usually just to keep us out of his hair, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
But here's what I know about playing darts in a bar
Mm-hmm.
is that every time you hit the bullseye, you make the most points the fastest.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take that analogy and you put it around your primary audience,
Mm-hmm.
the audience that gives you the best opportunity for growth,
Mm-hmm.
think of it as one person. Every time you get the attention of your primary audience, you make the most points the fastest.
Mm-hmm.
You make the most money the
Right.
fastest. You get the best attention the fastest.
Mm-hmm.
You get the most engagement the
Mm-hmm.
fastest. So think about your primary audience as the person that you want to put in the center of
Mm-hmm.
your messaging.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's what else I know about playing darts in a bar. If your dart lands in one of the outer rings around
Mm-hmm.
the bullseye, you still get points.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right? Depending on the game you're
Mm-hmm.
playing or how many points you
Mm-hmm.
need, that's still relevant.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're identifying your primary audience and you're centering your messaging
Mm-hmm.
around your primary audience, you may still resonate with somebody that
Right.
doesn't
You're not
generally do.
eliminating people.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You're not identifying your primary audience to the
Mm-hmm.
exclusion of
Mm-hmm.
others that you might be able to serve.
Right. Yeah. That outer ring might actually be everyone, but it's the
Well,
farthest that it can go.
so let me say this. If your dart lands on the wall that the dartboard's hanging on,
Mm-hmm. Which, yeah.
you don't get any points, which can
No.
happen, which can definitely happen. And
Yes. And
that is my
especially, yeah,
experience
when
playing
you've had a
darts.
few too many. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But you're not getting any points
Right.
ever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's to say that if your messaging is trying to be all things to
Mm-hmm.
all people,
Right.
and you are saying, my audience is
Mm-hmm.
everybody,
Mm-hmm.
you're not getting anybody's
Right. You're
attention.
hitting that wall.
You're hitting the wall. You are getting lost
Mm-hmm.
in the mass of
Mm-hmm.
content and
Right.
information that is
Mm-hmm.
available to
Mm-hmm.
everyone. And it actually does a disservice to
Mm-hmm.
your differentiator in your
Right.
business.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I work with people at Mercury. Our group works on rebranding projects
Mm-hmm.
or even launchpad projects, but we always focus in on let's determine your primary
Mm-hmm.
audience
Right.
for that reason. And I
Mm-hmm.
tell the dartboard story a lot,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
just to anchor
Mm-hmm.
business owners and leaders
Right.
around who gives us
Mm-hmm.
our best
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for growth where we
Mm-hmm.
are right now,
Right.
so that we can capture the best
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for our
Mm-hmm.
business, even if it is how do we want to make
Mm-hmm.
money,
Right.
even if that's your why.
Mm-hmm.
We usually dig in a little further to
Mm-hmm.
really
And they
understand what
probably
that
do
why.
have another reason, right?
Yes,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right. But
Right.
when they say it's
Mm-hmm.
everyone, like you're hitting the wall.
Mm-hmm.
If you
Right.
believe that your
Mm-hmm.
audience is
Right.
everyone, you're
And your
hitting the
dart
wall.
falls to the floor.
Yeah, yes,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Right. Well, and I've shared this story more than once on this podcast, and so apologies for those who have heard it before. But I was at a networking meeting, and you go around and you do your 30-second spiel, right? And this woman sold skincare products, and so her audience was everyone because we all have skin, right? And so that made sense to her, but even though it was a very good product, all sorts of things, none of us could think of someone to refer to her because her message was so broad
Mhm.
that we couldn't do it. And so we worked with her and she fine-tuned it to she wanted to work with 16-year-old boys who had acne.
That's beautiful.
Every single one of us went, yep, know somebody, right?
Yes.
And if and then you talk about the rings on the dartboard, okay, well, then it might be the next ring out might be 16-year-old girls.
Sure.
So, okay, that's still going to work. You just, and further, the rings that are further out might be, 50-year-old women who have dry skin. I mean, all of those things. So they could still buy the product.
Of course.
But we knew 16-year-old boys who had acne. And so that was how, she, and she did very well with that.
I love that you brought that up. When I was a consultant, so
Mm-hmm.
before I worked with
Mm-hmm.
Mercury, I was kind of in that place.
Mm-hmm.
If I told somebody I did brand strategy and marketing,
Right. Mm-hmm.
like, holy moly, that could mean a billion different things.
Right.
And it was hard for people to
Mm-hmm.
refer me.
Mm-hmm.
I had a mentor at the time that I was grateful to have. I was part of a networking group and found this mentor, and
Mm-hmm.
she said to me, whenever you introduce yourself,
Mm-hmm.
hone in on where your wheelhouse is. And at the time, I was
Mm-hmm.
coming out of my financial services job.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, let people know that you do brand and marketing work for financial advisors.
Because we all know them.
We all know who that is and can refer me. So really, as I was building my consultancy, my business, I was referred a lot to financial advisors and was really able to flex my muscle there because I had a lot of experience with that anyway. But it continued to evolve and, if you can do, and then people's minds, once they knew me, knew my work, go, well, if you can do this for this person, you can do it for lots of different organizations.
Right.
But really, as I was getting started, I had to narrow my focus as well. I had to put financial advisors in the center of my dartboard, and then others could resonate with me. and refer me to
Mhm.
my niche as well.
Right.
It's a
Yeah.
great example.
And kind of along those same lines, I was looking on your website, and one of the things that Mercury Creative Group does is work with businesses that are wanting to change. Whether it's change their name, change, and so that really intrigued me. And I didn't read any more on the website because I wanted to talk to you more about it. First of all, we don't like change. So that's one of the things. But there's many reasons why a company wants to change its name, sometimes good, sometimes bad, right? But are they starting over? How you walk us through that process?
That's a great question. It alludes to why would somebody need rebranding
Right.
and brand strategy work
Mm-hmm,
in
mm-hmm,
general. And when we dig into that, the point of view and really the alignment that we have found at Mercury is that it's based a lot on time.
okay.
So, on a time perspective, so think about things that cause that change that you're
Mm-hmm.
that you're speaking about:
Mm-hmm,
leadership turnover,
mm-hmm.
mergers and
Right.
acquisitions.
Yeah, it's no
Um,
longer the Bob Smith agency.
exactly.
Mm-hmm,
It could be where now we've evolved. We've been in business for a while, and we've
mm-hmm,
evolved to offer new products and
mm-hmm.
services.
Right. So
So
the landscaping company now does 5 other things.
yes, or this is an exact example from a
Mm-hmm.
client we served. The architecture firm now does design work,
Okay.
and
Mm-hmm,
that's not captured or
mm-hmm,
communicated in their current name.
mm-hmm,
So that kind of thing. And as we dive into it, when we do naming projects or
mm-hmm,
we get to the end of a brand
mm-hmm,
project, we'll potentially recommend a naming project.
mm-hmm,
It doesn't mean that we're recommending someone change their name.
mm-hmm,
What we're recommending is that you go through the process with
mm-hmm.
us on exploring whether or not your current name is still relevant,
Ah. Mm-hmm,
or here are other options
mm-hmm,
to put it up against and
mm-hmm,
compare and see where you
mm-hmm,
want to go next, what will serve you
mm-hmm,
best. So when we do naming projects, it's because we've recommended that based on the brand work we've done.
mm-hmm,
We've done that discovery of what's changing,
mm-hmm,
why is it changing, what are the effects to your leadership, your
mm-hmm,
operations, your audiences
mm-hmm,
as well. And then we take it away. We do discovery. We always start with discovery,
mm-hmm.
but we do discovery around their name alone, and we want to understand the history, the
Right.
legacy,
Mm-hmm,
where they're going, why it's different, and then we apply research.
mm-hmm,
So we apply research in terms of, yes, brainstorming, co-creating with the
mm-hmm,
clients. We want to hear their ideas
mm-hmm,
as well and what they've thought of. We put a bunch of things down on a piece of
mm-hmm,
paper, and then we research them for making sure that we're not presenting anything to a client that has an intrinsic risk.
mm-hmm.
This is my we're not attorneys, but we like to get our clients as close as possible to having something they can run with and
Right.
consider before they venture down the road
Mm-hmm,
of trademarking. So we
mm-hmm.
do USPTO search
Right.
to make
Mm-hmm,
sure we remove risk that way.
mm-hmm,
We also do just a broad,
mm-hmm,
like Google search, web search, to
mm-hmm,
make sure there's nothing that we're recommending that will get in their way
mm-hmm,
in terms of confusion
mm-hmm,
or risk in the marketplace. And then we put together the thought of what will best fit your audience
mm-hmm.
and what will best fit your messaging, your
Right.
authenticity,
Mm-hmm,
your brand character. We usually put two naming options
mm-hmm,
in front of them,
mm-hmm,
and we apply the same research then to their current name.
mm-hmm.
How does it align with your brand narrative
Right.
as we've discovered
Mm-hmm,
it? And then is there any risk in the marketplace right
mm-hmm,
now? How does that look from
mm-hmm,
that standpoint and trajectory? And now that you know what you
mm-hmm,
know, what's the next best
mm-hmm.
step?
Right. Right.
So really a name change is something
Mm-hmm,
that sometimes it is a necessity.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes it's a merger
mm-hmm,
that necessitates a
mm-hmm,
brand name. But we still do that due diligence
mm-hmm,
on, there's a lot of legacy and a lot of history
mm-hmm,
in the world of business that can be honored
mm-hmm.
and also moved
Right.
forward or evolved.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was trying to think of any big brands that have done it, and my guess is actually many big brands did, because they started out much smaller and then grew into Walmart, Starbucks, whatever it is. But I love that you do that research. The Business Power Hour is trademarked. And part of the reason I did that was because I didn't want someone else trademarking it and then coming back to me and saying, you got to take all 1,000 episodes down.
Right.
And we have had to send nicely worded letters to several different, organizations. And only if it's, could be confusion, right? That's because that's one of the things, if like a chamber has a networking thing that they call the Business Power Hour, no, we're not going to do that. But the last two that we did were podcasts that were called the Business Power Hour.
Wow.
Or one was the Biz Power Hour. And so clearly they hadn't done the search. And the funny thing was, and I do have an attorney who does this because I don't play one on TV.
Yep.
And it's worth it to me to, pay her to do this. We, within the last 6 months, we have sent 3 out. One was extremely apologetic. Oh my gosh, what do we need to do? Now he did get his attorney involved, but in a very good way. Sure. And so that resolved itself very quickly. Another one, the man was not nice. And was like, really, dude, and he actually called me bad things, because our philosophy is, and this comes from my attorney, I send the, hey, did you know, email.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah, and so I try and resolve it very nicely and very politely. And then if they don't, then the attorney gets involved with a cease and desist. Sure. And this man, we actually had to threaten further. He called me an idiot, among other things, and several things. And the funny thing is, he's a marketing person.
Oh my!
Was like, but and then the third one, she, it took a little while because she's very busy, but sure. She eventually changed the name of everything, and her podcast had like 30 episodes, and so it was not a big deal. But that is. Part of that is the brand, right? Yes. We don't want other people using our name. There is a reason Walmart, Kleenex, Starbucks, all of those things don't let you call your product, your company, the same thing. That you want to avoid that confusion. Now, of course, the thing is, as a business starting out, you might think you want that confusion. Hey, I'm going to be going to Starbucks, and it's not really a Starbucks. But yeah, it's, the key though is you got to be unique, and that's what I keep coming back to.
Absolutely, that authenticity is so important.
Right.
In branding and marketing, confusion is not the way to go.
Right.
Even if it's a short-term, short-term fix or a short-term revenue boost, it will not serve you long-term. Also, having your name, the Business Power Hour, and having that name out there, and your longevity means something. Your presence in your marketplace means something as well. And so being able to do that due diligence and that searching is important. At the same time, I will say this, there's some strategies for naming, businesses, for naming anything really. And some of them, it's getting more and more difficult because we're really a global economy. And we have to pay attention not just to not being the same name as the business down the street from us. We have to make sure that in the realm of a global economy, that we're not in a similar business naming, being called the same thing, because it's done more by web search, where you're finding someone. We can service people from across the globe. So there could be risk and confusion, even if it's somebody from a completely different area of the world. So yeah, that due diligence is important. And your name, is one of your elements. It's one of your strongest brand elements. It's not your only one. But your name should definitely align with your brand narrative, with your authenticity, and should not cause confusion in your marketplace.
Right. When I first launched Wise Women Communications, 25-ish years ago, that was what the heck do I call it? And, should I call it Deb Career Communications? which there's like 3 Deb careers in the whole world. So that was going to be a pretty safe one. But then my thought was, it can't really grow, right? And what if I want to have a partner or whatever, then I'd have to go through the whole renaming thing again. And so it was, but I did my due diligence and all of those various things. But as you said, it is a challenge. We recently trademarked Trying Not to Die.live, the nonprofit initiative, or the initiative that we're doing, because again, more than anything, we don't want someone else swooping in and saying, hey, that's ours. But it's, I tell people, I'm not sure that there's really any new products in the world.
Yeah. And it's hard. And
Mm-hmm.
words are hard, because in some they're all taken.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Just that, and I mean, that alone can be overwhelming when you're thinking about naming and branding. There's 2 great examples, even on the Mercury website, in our case studies around branding initiatives that became name changes. And lots of different things can happen in that process. One of those can be, nope, we are 100% sure we're keeping our current name. We've done the research, we've gone through the process, we're going to keep it. That's our best opportunity. Another one can be, we're going to completely change it. We're ready. This is the time. This makes sense for us. We have to change it. And the other one is some combination of that.
Right.
We're going to keep some element of it and describe it differently, or add or subtract words to it, or blend it with something else. One of my favorites, I talked about this architecture firm that we were working with, that over time, and they had a family name. It's Pope Design Group now. It was Pope Architects, and you can find this case study on the Mercury website. But the case study is, should we still be aligned with Pope?
Right.
Pope architecture has a great legacy, especially in the Twin Cities area.
Right. But are there still even any popes there?
There's not. Right? There's no popes currently working at the company. Even though there are still people at the company and leadership that were mentored under people that carried that name through. But ultimately, they decided that Pope had a strong foothold. They wanted to honor that legacy. But it became Pope Design Group because architecture had become bigger.
Right.
Design was an aspect that they leaned into. It was really important for the longevity of the company to change in that way. So it was kind of that hybrid of where to go next.
Right.
The other one that I loved, and we work a lot with associations as well, member-based associations. And one of the case studies is for a group called BLD Connection. They were previously the Lumbermen's Association. And they merged, the Northwest merged with in America, I want to say, with the other group. So they were merging with another group to make a consolidated association. And through the research and the brand strategy work, we discovered that, and this is an association that serves, their members are retail lumber yards. And so what we identified was that the retail lumber yards really sold more building materials than strictly lumber.
Okay.
We're like, okay. And something that we held along the way through the project. When we ended up naming them, it's an associations historically described themselves in an alphabet soup kind of way. Lots of acronyms and abbreviations, etc.
And sometimes the acronyms don't even mean anything.
That's true, which is always breaks my brand strategy heart a little bit. But we ended up discovering that if you take their current name is BLD Connection. Connection is the value they provide through the association. BLD serves a lot of purposes. One, BLD is an abbreviation for the word build.
Okay. Well, and I was coming up with building, lumber, and duh. I couldn't figure out the D.
It's building materials is the B, and lumber dealers.
Okay.
So BLD is an abbreviation for for build. It's an
Right.
acronym for building materials and lumber dealers. And
Mhm.
build connection is a
Mhm.
call to action for
Mhm.
their organization, for
Right.
their members,
Mhm.
to build connection with each other.
Mhm.
And the name just was it because it served so many purposes. It's one of my favorite naming projects, but all really stemmed from them
Right.
digging in and defining their brand elements first, what made them unique, what their essential value was,
Right.
then applying the naming strategy to it,
Right.
which was great.
Well, and what I loved about both the examples you gave is those are names that then continue to grow and add additional things. Pope Design Group, there's a whole bunch of other things that if they're not doing them now, they could add in. Same with the BLD organization. They can, maybe they merge with another,
Exactly.
whatever. But and so the nice thing is then they're not doing this again. And I think that's one of the things that when we start a business, we might focus on X. Well, that's great, but what if it grows? And which is what you had in both instances.
Yeah, it's usually when we do brand strategy work, we take a look at clients, especially a comprehensive rebrand is how we message about it. It's based on, I had mentioned this before, on timing. Usually those major changes within an organization or a business happen within, it's about a 7 to 8 year
Right.
sweet spot where somebody might be going through brand work again to realign those brand foundational elements because of all the things we've been talking about. It may be a merger or acquisition. The business may have evolved into offering other things, other products or services. The leadership changes. Part of that is just because when you think about leaders, especially executive leaders coming into their role, that 7 or 8 year timeline is when they might be considering moving on from that role and or retiring into something else. So that just longevity and timeline on its own is what causes brand strategy to be rebranded.
Right.
And then from there, that's really your foundation. So we encourage businesses as well is set your brand strategy first. Your strategic planning is an evolution off of that brand strategy. So everything's aligned. Your marketing strategy is part of your strategic plan. And then your marketing tactics, your marketing plan is on top of that. So if you have 7 to 8 years, your brand strategy stays in place. Your strategic plan, we recommend a 3 year strategic plan for businesses because
and in this economy, you might need to be sooner than that,
right? But 3 years we're finding is a bit of a sweet spot. Some people will say, "Oh, I do a 10 year strategic plan." You may not ever realize that plan if it's too long.
Right.
So we recommend 3 years, and then your marketing strategy is re-upped every year, same as your marketing plan.
Right. And in many ways, this is a brand refresh or refresh.
Sure.
And so how do we know when it's time for us to go through that?
So,
and what does it mean? How, because I think that's people are like, what do you mean? I've got this brand. Everybody knows me. Why would I want to make any changes to it?
Sure. We approach brand strategy work in two different ways. Both apply what we call the Mercury method. And the Mercury method is basically 3 phases, if you will: strategy, design, and then marketing are the services we provide. The Mercury method is this framework that we can be really creative within. Which is why it's brilliant. So regardless of the client that we're working with, the client type we're working with, we can apply the method for how we get there, how we set strategy, how we approach design, and then how we get to marketing. But within there, we approach it 2 different ways. Some of our clients need a comprehensive rebrand. Meaning we need to realign core values. We need to take a look at our mission and vision. We need to really define, again, our primary audience, our value proposition, our essential value, our brand character, our voice. We need to take a look at all of those foundational elements. That can be for some of those big shifts that we were just talking about. The other way that we approach it, we call it a brand launch pad. Which is more that refresh. And we focus on 3 big things. We focus on reconnecting with your primary audience.
Mm-hmm.
So making sure that's solidified.
Mm-hmm.
And then we move into value propositions. So
Mm-hmm.
drafting that value
Mm-hmm.
proposition and understanding where you are in the
Mm-hmm.
marketplace. So your differentiator, who your competitors are,
Mm-hmm.
how you're truly different from them, and does
Mm-hmm.
that still align with your primary
Mm-hmm.
audience and your essential
Mm-hmm.
value? So focusing in on that
Mm-hmm.
value prop and re-upping that, kind
Mm-hmm.
of brushing it off, making
Mm-hmm.
any edits that need to happen. And then from there, we move into key messaging.
Mm-hmm.
So key messaging pillars, that is important for our clients that might be needing a website refresh
Mm-hmm.
or they're moving into new design work like an updated logo.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not doing a complete comprehensive rebrand
Mm-hmm.
because of a merger and acquisition,
Mm-hmm.
a leadership change. But maybe there is something else that is design worthy that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of driving this. We need to reset
Mm-hmm.
where we are with these three big
Mm-hmm.
elements and make sure that our messaging is on
Mm-hmm.
point. And that's where a launch pad
Mm-hmm.
applies really well.
I love that. And to me, yeah, like when you look at somebody's website and you go, wow, that hasn't changed in 10 years. Like it still has
Yeah.
Flash, which doesn't even work on things. You're right.
Yeah.
But the first thing I think of is, have they been stuck for the last 10 years? Has there been any innovation, any of those things?
Mhm.
And yeah, it's a pain to redo things, but you want people to say, hey, this is new. This is new and improved, right?
Mhm. Yeah, sometimes those visual elements are
Mm-hmm.
the things that trigger an
Mm-hmm.
organization to go, oh
Mm-hmm.
gosh, we're outdated.
Mm-hmm.
And we do take them back to discovery.
Mm-hmm.
So can we navigate rewriting
Mm-hmm.
website content? Of course we can.
Right.
We're brand and marketing
Mm-hmm.
experts. So can we tackle that for
Mm-hmm.
you? Can we help with that
Mm-hmm.
content writing? Can we help with that those
Mm-hmm.
visual elements? Yes. But we say we won't do that without really
Mm-hmm.
defining your brand
Right.
elements and
Mm-hmm.
making sure that whatever content that we're putting out there for you, whatever design
Mm-hmm.
is happening, that it gets the
Mm-hmm.
attention of your primary audience.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about who that
Mm-hmm.
is, that it really brings forward your essential
Mm-hmm.
value. So let's talk about what that
Mm-hmm.
is. And that it's differentiated within your
Right.
marketplace, that
Mm-hmm.
you are not, I mean, this is speaking of financial services,
Mm-hmm.
little throwback to that. I could take a list of words. If you were a financial advisor,
Mm-hmm.
you would give me words like integrity,
Mm-hmm.
trustworthy, relationship
Yep. Mm-hmm.
driven, and planning for the
Mm-hmm.
future.
They're all going to be on every one of those sites.
They're
Mm-hmm.
all going to be on
Mm-hmm.
everybody's site.
Mm-hmm.
So we dig in to go,
Mm-hmm.
no, you're different. You're an
Right.
authentic person
Mm-hmm.
delivering something of value. Let's
Mm-hmm.
bring that
Mm-hmm.
forward. Not that those things aren't important,
Right.
but
Mm-hmm.
they're table stakes in
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
industry. There are those elements in lots of different industries that are
Mm-hmm.
really table stakes. So instead of repeating what everyone else has to say, we really want to dig
Mm-hmm.
into your authenticity and
Right.
bring that forward.
Mm-hmm.
So even if somebody would call me today and say, Cheri, can you help with our
Mm-hmm.
website?
Mm-hmm.
Say, of course we can,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
but we're going
Mm-hmm.
to make sure we're all
Mm-hmm.
aligned on your brand
Right.
element
Right.
first.
And some of those words might need to always be there.
Of course.
Like so my husband just retired. And so we were getting a financial planner and I just told him, you go do that. But one of the words that we looked for, and I only did because I saw the commercials, right? Are they a fiduciary?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now I didn't, I know what it means and things like that. But if I had gone to a website or somebody's LinkedIn profile or whatever, and if they didn't have that word, I might go, well, then they aren't. So I think that's something that people need to keep in mind is if your potential client, customer, whoever is looking for that word, then that word had better be there.
Of course. Of course. Yeah, there's lots to think about
Mm-hmm.
when you're in that realm. And some of that dives then
Mm-hmm.
into marketing. What
Right.
does SEO look
Mm-hmm.
like? How do I
Mm-hmm.
apply and write paid ads?
Mm-hmm.
But that content, it's so important that
Mm-hmm.
your messaging align with
Mm-hmm.
your brand foundation
Right.
and not the other way
Mm-hmm.
around.
Right. And it's not, let's put every latest and greatest whiz bang thing on a website.
Right.
I've had clients before and they've done it because their competitor has it or another site that they really liked.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, we don't want video on your site,
Right.
or we don't, the slideshow that pops up that has, well, maybe that worked for that website that you looked
Right.
at, but it might, and so, that's always a challenge when you're on our side of the table to let them know, okay, the latest and greatest might not be what you want.
Yeah, we call it shiny object marketing.
Yes, squirrel. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
Mm-hmm. Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
But
Now, I think we've all, also seen that, especially for a small business owner, maybe they're, the one person, or they're, one person with just, a handful of employees. They don't even have branding. They just go with the flow. Their website looks different than their Facebook page, than their business cards, all of those things. And so, I want to go back to the basics. Why is it so important that we do have at least some consistency?
sure. I think it is really to create that relationship with your
Mm-hmm.
audience, to create that emotional connection to your audience. I'll give you this. I'll give you this little example or story. It's this idea that you think about you, Deb, more than anyone else thinks about you.
Yeah, I do.
You know how I know that? Because I think about me more than
Yes.
anyone thinks
Mm-hmm.
about me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we think about, oh, it's fine, they know me,
Mm-hmm.
our ability, especially right now,
Mm-hmm.
we are all as individuals blasted with so much
Yes.
information
Like we said,
constantly.
squirrel. Mm-hmm.
Yes, so to really
Mm-hmm.
obtain somebody's
Mm-hmm.
attention and keep it,
Mm-hmm.
having that continuity,
Mm-hmm.
the clarity of what the organization
Mm-hmm.
does, the alignment and the continuity
Mm-hmm.
to their visuals, to their
Mm-hmm.
messaging, and have it repeated over and over
Mm-hmm.
and over again with
Mm-hmm.
consistency is that important to
Mm-hmm.
really gain and hold the
Right.
attention of your
Mm-hmm.
audience.
Right. And we've all seen the examples where, maybe we follow somebody on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
and every other week it seems like they're doing something different.
Right.
And all that does is make me think, well, then you probably don't do anything well.
Yes. And think of the dartboard. When
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to be all things to
Right.
all
Mm-hmm.
people,
Your dart
you'll
goes thwood.
your dart hits the wall and falls to the
Mm-hmm.
floor. No,
Right.
you have
Mm-hmm.
nobody's
Mm-hmm.
attention.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, oh my gosh, this has been such a great discussion. We've only got about 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
And we didn't even talk about AI.
Oh,
All right.
sure.
And I actually love AI,
Mhm.
but now so many people are using it to create their brand and their messaging. And I'm going to raise my hand on that, right?
Yeah.
But we need to have you back because
Oh, I love that.
there's the, we all, there's only, are you creating something that already exists because Chat GPT or whatever went out and found it, and it went, okay, it says that here, so we should say there. And so yeah, I want to have you back so that we can really talk about how we can be using AI in a good way to be doing this.
Yeah, I would love that. I'll actually my team at Mercury, we
Mm-hmm.
are working on something that really pairs brand
Mm-hmm.
strategy with how to utilize
Mm-hmm.
AI. It
Right.
makes the
Mm-hmm.
inception of AI
Mm-hmm.
makes your brand elements even
Mm-hmm.
more important.
Right. Right.
So that you're doing the
Mm-hmm.
thinking, AI can do the work,
Mm-hmm.
but you're doing the thinking.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You're bringing that
Right.
authenticity to the table,
Mm-hmm.
even if you're using AI
Mm-hmm.
as a tool.
Mm-hmm.
So important. So more to come on
Mm-hmm.
that, and I'm excited about the tools we're coming out with
I
next.
love it. Well, and the cool thing, fun thing, scary thing is how rapidly all of that is changing.
Yes.
I use Chat GPT very often, and I've been using it to, with a new product and service that I'm going to do. And when I know people who've named theirs, which that's a little further than what I want to go, but
Yeah.
it will say, I'll have it do whatever, and then it will say, let me know how else. And I mean, it's like I'm talking, it's talking to me. Let me know how else I can help. You are so inspiring with what you're doing. And I'm like, ah. If it calls me Hal, I'm really going to freak out.
Right.
But yeah, it's very interesting. And I think we're going to be using it more and more as, and as the tool that it should be, and not to take over.
Agreed. Yep. It's a tool. It doesn't replace your thinking and your
Right.
authenticity, but it can definitely help do the work.
Right. Well, oh my gosh, like I said, we are almost at the top of the hour. Tell us a little bit more about Mercury Creative Group. How do we find you, and what are the services that you provide?
Yes. So Mercury Creative Group, you can find us at mercurycreativegroup.com. You can also link to me on LinkedIn, searching my name, Cheri Quinn. You'll find me there. I talk a lot about Mercury Creative Group there as well. So you can follow my just brand strategy, thought leadership. And what we do, we're a strategy first company. So we do brand strategy, design, and marketing. We do it in that order, if you will. That's important to us and our point of view. So we help with everything from the 2 brand strategy elements that I described, comprehensive rebrand for companies and organizations, as well as that brand launch pad and then that lighter lift. We can help you figure out what that means to you. And then moving into any design aspects that you need that align with your brand strategy. And also we do an ongoing marketing partnership. We can help set your strategy, create your marketing plan, and also help you execute it on that if that's something that is needed by your organization. We also have lots of templates and worksheets on our website.
Right.
So,
I was looking at that. Lots of great resources.
yes, so those resources, what Deb and I talked about today, including the how to define your primary audience, for example, a worksheet on your value proposition, and even how to audit your marketing strategy exists there. So I encourage you to go out and find that.
I love that. And again, it's mercurycreativegroup.com.
You got it.
Perfect. I love it. And we do have links that we'll put in the show notes, both to that and to your LinkedIn profile. But, this really has been wonderful, and we will have you on again. But until then, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave with everyone?
My final thought really for the work that you do within your own organizations and just for yourself, lean into your authenticity, your essential value. That is really how you can serve with your talent. Like, how can you be of best service with your talent is really by leaning into who you are, what you do, and who you do it for. So I encourage that. Don't hit the wall with your messaging. Just really bring your authenticity forward.
I love it. Well, I have been having so much fun talking with Cheri Quinn of Mercury Creative Group. I'm Deb Creer, and until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.